And Paul says to them in verse 19 that he wishes to send Timothy back to them. So that is Timothy, can report back to Paul about how well they're going. Is he checking up on them? Yes. What are his motivations? Are they to see, his motivations to see if they've sinned and can tear them to pieces? No. He wants to be encouraged in verse 19. He then makes a curious side comment that we could easily miss. He says, verse 20, I have no one else like him who is genuinely concerned for your welfare. All the rest of them look back to their own interests, not to that of Christ Jesus. Timothy is coming to get a good report from them, but there's something else. Have a look at verse 4. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. Whose interest was Timothy's? They weren't his own interests. They were the interests of Christ Jesus. Timothy is an example to them of what their life should be like. Paul has said in verse 4, this is how you should live. He then gives an example of Jesus, and then he says, and by the way, Timothy, watch him. This guy, keep an eye on him. Because Timothy, his interests are those of Christ Jesus. When Paul normally wants to give an example of how you should live, who does he normally give? You get to answer this question. Who does Paul say imitate? Himself and Jesus. Those two. He's already given the example of Jesus, right? But he doesn't give his own example. I suspect it's because he's talking about being humble. And it wouldn't work. Look at me! I'm humble. He doesn't do that. But then he moves on from Timothy and he says he's got to send Epaphroditus back to them. Epaphroditus is another example of how most people look after their own interests, not the interests of Christ Jesus. Okay? And Epaphroditus is an example of how it should really be. Epaphroditus was sick. In fact, he nearly died, verse 27. But who is he concerned for? Is he concerned for himself? Oh, look at me, I was so sick, I nearly died. No. He's worried and concerned because his friends at church have found out about it and they are upset. He is concerned, not because he nearly died. I think he knows Paul well enough to know that to live is Christ, to die is gain. But he says, they're worried about me. I'm okay now. They don't need to be worried. They don't need to be concerned. And so his concern is for them, not for himself. You see, it's not wrong to let people know if you're struggling. That's a good thing to do. But you don't have to be a status holder. Let other people speak sometimes. So, Epaphroditus, it's not saying that he didn't tell anyone he was sick, but he was concerned because he thought other people were too worried about it. Well, what does it say to us? Well, our twit generation needs to stop being status holders. I don't think the world needs to know when you've got a cold. I know I'm guilty occasionally of letting everyone know what's going on in my life, but the constant seeking of sympathy is not the characteristic of Christians. We're not stoics. We don't sort of have a stiff upper lip even though we're dying of cancer and we've been run over by a car and all that sort of stuff. But we don't go on and on and on about it. Unfortunately, I think that is it's part of our generation. It's okay to be truthful when someone says, how are you going? But don't go over the top. Over and over and over again in this letter, we read the example of putting others first. The first step to do that is don't get stuck in argument. Don't retaliate. Don't get into a fight when someone turns you down or upsets you or does something that you don't like. Now, let me give you an example. Mandy and I have been watching a show on the internet. I won't tell you the name because it's got some stuff that's not for you kids. But it's quite interesting. It's about these people who play World of Warcraft, and they're a guild, and that's actually the smallest part of the whole show. They're in a guild, and they later, dude, they're in a guild, and they Andrew, I'll tell you later. And they meet up, and everything's fine until one person starts getting snarky with someone else in their game, and they end up backstabbing each other, and it almost all falls apart. It's absolutely hilarious. But anyway, their lives, their online lives, just crumbles because they hold grudges, they backstab, and they look out for number one. Let me give you another example. There's a real life example. My kids fight. I love them dearly, but they bicker and fight because they're always concerned that one of them is not being a fair deal. I've heard the phrase, "it's not fair." I'm not kidding, about 1,000 times this week. And we're trying to work through that. But let me tell you the real tragedy for my kids is that in their concern to have what is fair, they actually miss out. There's one child in particular who will stand there and say, "It's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair," and go on and on and on and on about it. And I would have said to this child, just go over there for 5 minutes and sort yourself out, and then come back and we'll do this. But that child, who will remain nameless, will just go on for an hour and miss out on everything because that child is concerned that they have not received what is fair. Are we like that? Do we argue and bicker because we didn't get what we deserve? Because someone else upset us? Someone else was mean to us or didn't listen to us? Guys, let's get down to the chase. If we murmur, argue, bicker, and hold grudges, we're not being forgiving. And we're not being forgiving of Christians. We're not being forgiving of people that Jesus died for. And if the Creator of the universe is prepared to say to that person who has mortally offended him and is prepared to lay his life down for them, who will we to hold a grudge for something that God has already forgiven them for? Don't be a doormat, but forgive and get on with life. Live in a way that is worthy of the gospel, which means forgiving. And if you're not forgiving, repent. Because you're going to be like one of my children, and you're going to stand there and go, "It's not fair. You don't know what he or she did to me. And it's so wrong." And I'm going to say, you're missing out on life because you're not forgiving. And it's not great for your friends to see. That's become a point. Any questions?
What's murmur?
So it's talking under you, like the word literally means talking under your breath. But it's specifically meaning talking about someone behind your back. We're doing like this. Someone with another translation want to give me the word? Sorry? Grumblings. Complaining. Don't whinge.